Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar brought to you by the Canadian Professional Sales Association. Today's webinar will focus on must-have productivity tools for every salesperson. Please note that you will be able to ask questions at the end of the session using the chat function. We'll try to answer all of our questions within our allotted time. Upon registration for this webinar, you've also gained access to our exclusive Sales Toolbox ebook that will be available as a handout in the bottom right corner of your dashboard screen. If you are unable to access it, don't worry, we will send it out via email upon ending. Hosting today's webinar is Jamie Jackson. Jamie is the leader of Toronto-based group Rockstar Sales, a group of sales professionals who seek solutions to everyday issues encountered by fellow salespeople. Jamie is a B2B sales rep with over 15 years of experience. He achieved 433% of his quota in 2015 and 646% of his quota to date. Now, without further ado, I'll hand it over to Jamie to start.
Great, thank you, Ruben. So as Ruben mentioned, we were invited to come and share some of the tools that I use on a day-to-day basis. So the Rockstar team, like myself, we're all full-time B2B reps where we share ideas and what's working and what's not. Prospecting is probably the thing we talk about most. It's where people need the most help. And in particular, it's really important because in sales, our time is money. It's our currency. Our income is directly tied to our activities. So really, our time is more important than any other job. It's literally money. So I'm always looking for opportunities where we can buy that back and do something different with it. And so today, we're going to be going through 5 of the tools that I use on a regular basis and how I use them, what they're good for, some of the pitfalls around them, and what they cost. And in particular, how does it buy your time back in and around prospecting? And we'll cover all 3 of those things for each one of the 5 tools. And we'll definitely make sure that we've got some time for questions all the way through. If you've got questions about a particular tool or how we're using it, definitely speak up, and we've got an invite at the end as well. Is there any questions before we start? Okay. Okay, so first off, I want to talk a look at a tool called Yesware. So Yesware is something that I use every day. This is their website right here. And really, it boils down to 2 things that I use this for. The most useful part of Yesware, in my opinion, is the ability to effectively stalk someone via email. They have software that allows you to see when someone reads your email, when they open the attachment, on what device they open it, and where. So that's extremely useful. For someone like me, I have a large list of prospects I'm chasing at any given time. How do I tell when someone is actually responding to that? So I think really there's this myth in sales that it's some sort of a Jedi mind trick, that you can go and persuade someone to buy something they don't need. In my experience, I haven't found that to be the case. What it is you're reaching out halfway and seeing who meets you the other half to see who's willing to engage. When you can see who's reading your emails and when, that tells you who's engaging. That tells me who I should focus my efforts on. Who am I going to call? Who am I going to send that follow-up email to? I'll give you an example. Earlier this week, I had sent out an email to an executive at a prospect I really wanted to talk to, and he said he would forward it through the organization. So I really wanted to find out what happened. So this morning I took a look, and he had that email forwarded to 13 different devices within that organization, all here within Toronto, and people had opened it 43 times. So I know there's some traction with that idea. There are people reading it, so I know this is something that I should follow up on. And in particular, when you're prospecting, it really helps to take a look and see what type of results that you're getting. So I'm going to go through this. I'm actually not allowed to show you my actual Yesware screen because my company has a lot of company confidential information in it. So I'll show you some of the reports instead that Yesware has provided. So for example, let's take a look at this. Team member, Andrew at Yesware, he sent 1,087 emails. He sent about 1,000 of them that were actually tracked. So you can choose which emails you want to track and which you don't. Internal emails, there's usually not much point in tracking them. I had 937 of them opened, and 496 had reply. So he's got an open rate of 92%. That's fantastic. And he's got multiple opens at 68%. That's also fantastic. And 48% of them actually had a reply. And they have hot messages, which is Yesware's own internal scoring to see how many people are reading it, how often they open it, that type of thing, so that you can really drill down into what's useful and what's not. Who do you actually need to focus on within your prospect base? Yesware is a fantastic tool to be able to do that. And the functions are slightly different as well in terms of whether you're a frontline rep or a sales manager. Can anybody just send through, give me a quick yes on the chat. Anybody here who's managing a team versus a frontline rep? Because if there's a large portion of the audience that's actually managing a team, I'm happy to focus more on how to use some of these tools to drive the entire team forward, not just your own performance. Okay, I got a couple of yeses coming through. So let's start with that for now. There's one function, is who do you talk to? Who do you follow up on? So that's number one function of Yesware. The second function of Yesware that really, in my mind, saved me a lot of time was, I like to call it automated email stalking. So I would spend approximately 2 hours a day going through lists of people that I had talked to in the past and followed up to see where was I at that point, what do I need to talk to them about next, and then sending them an email or giving them a call. That would take about 2 hours a day. What Yesware allows you to be able to do is automate that function. So you can do a mail merge just like you can in Word and Excel, and you can send them, in my case, a series of 4 prospecting emails. That's normally what I do. I have a 4-touch cadence to people that I've never talked to. And you can program that to happen automatically. Now, the interesting part is not necessarily that you can do a mail merge. You can do that without Microsoft Office. What is interesting is that you can automate it so that that email cadence will stop if that person replies. Now that, to me, is useful, because that means I don't have to keep following up all the time, and I know my prospects aren't going to see that they're almost being spammed, like I've got them some automated filter, which in fact is actually happening, but it feels a lot more personal. So that's extremely useful to me. So I used to spend 2 hours a day doing that. So if I work the math, it's 2 hours a day. I would do that 5 days a week, so 10 hours a week times 4 weeks. That's 40 hours a month. Yesware, for their Team Edition, which is the one I would recommend, costs about $25 US. So call it, with a bad exchange rate, call it $35, just for the sake of argument. So $35, I have bought back 40 hours worth of time for that month. I will take that deal every single day. That's one of the reasons why I use Yesware and how I use it. I'll show you just a couple of quick things too. For the team, folks that are actually managing a team, team template reports out of Yesware, this is a screenshot, are very useful. Particularly, whether you're a rep or you're leading the team, you want to find out what's working. Who's actually successful at engaging that prospect and inspiring them to actually take a meeting. It's a real skill to learn. It takes a long time. In my experience, it takes about 18 months worth of really solid practice and coaching before you can get someone to be able to do that. So the templates, which are every time you upload an email, it can become a template, will show you which of the emails are engaging. So you take a look at this. Here's the top 10 templates by reply rate, 180 days. So this Launchpad customer introduction had a 62.5% reply rate, which has to be fictitious. Nobody's going to get that high a reply rate in prospecting. But the point is, you can see what's working with a granularity that's just not possible otherwise. And in particular, you can go to this other report, template leaderboard. You can see the open and reply rates along with the number of emails sent. And you can get, not only see what's working at a granular level, but you can be able to share it. And everybody can see that, because that's half the battle sometimes. Any questions in particular on Yesware? Feel free to just shoot me a note in the chat function. And Ruplan, I'll let you curate them. Okay. Not seeing too many come through, but if they come through, I'm happy to turn back to it in a minute. So let's take a look at the second tool then. The second tool that I use a lot on a daily basis is Upwork. So Upwork is a network of freelancers where you can search and people will do work for you for all sorts of different things. Now, for me, how does that come into play? Because I would spend about an hour a day building lists of people to talk to. As a sales rep, we have to have a constant stream of new people to talk to. That is our job. And that focus changes a lot, at least for myself. I get a different idea, maybe a different angle that I can approach things at, and I'll want to talk to a different set of people within my target organization. Maybe just a different idea. So what Upwork allows you to do is be able to automate that. So I would spend an hour a day looking through LinkedIn, which we'll talk about in a minute, either looking through LinkedIn or data.com or some of the other sources that I would use, and building a spreadsheet saying, here's the first name, last name, here's a company, here's a hyperlink to the LinkedIn profile, and the contact info. And I would spend about an hour a day doing that. But you think about that. Is that the best use of your time? No. For me, it absolutely wasn't. That was grunt work. And to top it off, I really didn't like doing it. So I went on to Upwork, and you can find a whole variety of people that will do various bits of lead generation work for you. So for example, here's a website right here. You go category, I like sales and marketing, and you go right into lead generation. So here's a whole team of people with ratings and reports that do lead generation. So SBG Infotech, there's a team of people here based in India. They have logged, they've done 142,000 hours worth of work on Upwork. This is our Norman Lester. Here's an individual in the Philippines, charges $5 an hour. He's done 689 hours worth of work and has a 91% job success. You can get folks like this to build your lead lists for you. And there's actually people within Upwork that specialize just in building lists for salespeople. So this is an interesting thing for me. I want to throw in a couple of caveats. Here's my experience using Upwork. As a rule of thumb, there are two major drawbacks that you need to be aware of. Doesn't mean it's not a good tool. It means that you need to know this going in so that you have a realistic set of expectations. Number one, you have to give very, very specific instructions in terms of what you want them to do. You need to tell them, I want you to go into LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I want marketing directors for software companies within Canada with somewhere between 51 and 200 employees. And I want a spreadsheet showing first name, last name, email address, and a hyperlink to the LinkedIn profile. If you are not that specific, and do a test run. Say, send me the first 10 names, evaluate that, and then do it again. If you don't do that, you're not going to get a decent response. You have to be very specific. There's a little bit of background noise. Is everybody on mute? Okay. So that's one thing. The other thing to look at, and the major drawback I think with Upwork, is the fact that the quality of work that comes out of Upwork is fairly low due to the fact that it's freelancers. In my experience, you're going to have to blow through 5 suppliers before you actually find one that works. So you see most of them are billed out on a per hour basis. That's a function of the technology that Upwork uses, not necessarily how you can price your deals. But I would say you want to start off by giving 4 or 5 people small projects worth 20 to 50 bucks, whatever it is, and test them out. For the ones that actually work, that's when you switch it over and you turn it into a per name basis. So I price my deals for lead generation on Upwork. I price them on a per name basis. I pay somewhere between 30 and 50 cents a name to do that. I would suggest you do the same. That said, all of them are going to need a pilot. So in terms of caveats, that's all I have for caveats for Upwork, is that 1, be prepared to go through 4 or 5 before you find one that works. And number 2, you need to give very specific instructions. But it's very good to be able to outsource a lot of the grunt work so you can increase your selling time. And that is the #1 barrier. If time is our currency, how much of it are we spending actually on selling time versus admin work? administrivia. In my case, I was spending a ton of time doing that stuff, and I was able to save at least an hour a day for 30 cents a name, and I expense those. I would suggest everybody, there's a great way to buy back some of your time. Any questions around Upwork specifically? Okay, let me talk about the next one. Well, if any questions came in. So the other thing, oh, by the way, one other last thing with the Upwork, there's freelancers for all sorts of different things. You can also, personal assistants, personal virtual assistants. There's even a whole section for people who will prospect calls for you. I have had very little confidence in anyone else prospecting for me. If anybody here has actually had some experience with Upwork and using that successfully, I'd love to hear it. I haven't seen any yet. But personal virtual assistants, definitely useful. I have one, I use them, and it saves me a lot of admin time, and you can usually expense it even better. So next up, let's talk about LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So this gets a lot of play with salespeople, I think probably for good reason. Now, give me some feedback here on the message form. How many people right now have the LinkedIn Sales Navigator premium account? Because I need to know how much detail we need to go into. Not everyone at once now. Okay, I'm gonna dig into this a little bit while I'm waiting for some feedback. Because if you're not using it right now, here's a great opportunity to really cut back a lot of your time. And there's a lot of people like myself, I've been in this for a long time. We used to spend an enormous amount of time going through and calling prospect companies saying, can I speak to the person responsible for? Now there's a lot there, and that was a lot of time. Half of the job was just figuring out who to talk to in the first place. The thing with LinkedIn Sales Navigator, okay, no Sales Navigator, yes, premium account. Okay, I would suggest anybody that does have a premium account, make sure you switch it over to Sales Navigator instead. It's approximately $80 a month, a little bit less if you buy an annual one, goes down to about $700. It is one of the most useful tools you will have because that $700 allows you to buy back a year's worth of, can I speak to the person responsible for? So, you want to see an example? Let's take a look. So this is my own LinkedIn Sales Navigator account. Here's what it looks like when I go to search for people that I want to talk to. Now, in our previous example, we talked about marketing directors for companies, software companies in Canada. So let's do that. So function, I'm going to type in marketing. Let's go for a marketing person. I want to say I want VPs and I want directors. Say a lot of the time they get things done. Industry, I'm going to do computer software. And company size, I want somewhere between 51 and 200 employees. And in geography, we're going into Canada. So what we have here is now it's showing up as 0 results. You see up at the top, it's a dynamic search function. So this is definitely something that you want to look at. Because as your queries go through, you can see how many people show up. So let's remove that. Why don't we add a different company size? Let's say slightly bigger. See what happens. Still 0 results. Okay, so let's take a look at the United States. We want to talk to our friends down south. There's 2,219 results. You know what? I'm going to take out the VP. I just want to talk to the marketing folks. Now there's 1,408 results. These are the people that you want to talk to. I'm going to hide this for a sec. Click on search. And here's what happens. So here's 1.4 thousand people that you could talk to and sell to. And this is what LinkedIn does. So you can pop this open. Let's take a look at Mike Grandietti. This is a real guy. He works for Reduxio Systems. He lives in Boston. Fair enough. So we can read through his LinkedIn profile and see a lot of different things. Very good. That will give you some idea. I mean, different contacts that we have in common. Here's a couple of people that we know in common. And here's what he's posting. Here's what he's sharing. Here's what his responsibilities are. You can read in detail. and what he's working on and what he likes, what are some of the groups he's a member of, and it allows you to figure out who to talk to. So it's a very useful tool in that. The lead builder function in Sales Navigator is probably the most useful tool there. That said, that's not the only tool. Because here's the other thing, is that one by one, it actually takes a lot of time to do this and build a list of people that you want to talk to. And LinkedIn does this deliberately because they don't want people spamming their members. Their primary consideration is their audience experience, their member experience as part of the entire thing. So what they want to do is they want to make sure that you're doing things very targeted. And we're going to talk about that in a sec. They give you rewards for actually being good at your job. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So it's actually very time consuming once you've got that to actually build a list. This is where the team at Upwork comes in. So you've got a freelancer. You make sure they already have a Sales Navigator premium account. A lot of them do, especially if it's a team of people. If you're on Upwork and you're looking for a lead generation person, I would suggest hiring a team of people. There's lots of firms in India and the Philippines that do this rather than an individual. You'll get a better result, and they usually have a LinkedIn Sales Navigator account as well. And it allows you to specify exactly what you need. And what it'll do is that will allow you to draw out those names, and you've got your lead list. So any questions about finding people on LinkedIn Sales Navigator and what that looks like? Okay, no questions yet. Here is okay, we got a question incoming, so wait for that. By the way, here's some of the more advanced features that they've talked about recently. So 94 of them have changed jobs in the last 90 days. 29 leads with a team link intro. So for example, team link is a function on Sales Navigator that allows to see who do other people in my organization that I work with, who do they have contacts into. There's 30 people mentioned in the news. Out of those, 373 of them posted on LinkedIn in the past 30 days. So if you're looking for context, one of the best ways to actually engage with someone you don't know is comment on something that they've written. Say, hey, look, I love that article that you wrote on X. I had a question about it. What about this? By the way, I'd love to chat with you about what you guys are doing around whatever you want to sell them. I found that to be extremely effective. And then there's 4 leads that follow my company on LinkedIn. Another really good tool, and here's the bonus, LinkedIn Sales Navigator. They changed, I believe it was last year, they changed the pricing and they changed the functionality of LinkedIn Sales Navigator. The single best feature out of all of those, in my opinion, is right here. There's 94 people that have changed jobs in the last 90 days. For me, I found those are the people that are most open to a new idea. And in sales, we're in the ideas business. That's what we do. So if you want to find somebody at the right time, when they change jobs is often at the right time. So that is some of the best prospects that I get is from people that have changed jobs in the last 90 days. Let's see. In regards to LinkedIn sales, when people search online, is this populated as incognito? Will they get a notification of a person viewing your profile? You can do both. You can hide it, or you can have people know that you're looking at their profile. For me as a sales rep, I leave it on. I want people to know that I'm looking at their profile for a couple of different reasons. One, if they're following it carefully, they'll see that we're looking, and so they might be curious. Oh, who is this guy? Why is he investigating me? Why do I want to talk to him? He might have something interesting. And if you use your LinkedIn profile right, you can actually generate enough curiosity just from your profile that people will occasionally call you. So I want them looking at that. The other part is this, is if I'm going to meet with someone, quite often they'll check me out on LinkedIn. Fair enough. I want them to see that I've done my homework. I want them to see that I cared enough about their time that I researched them on LinkedIn. And it doesn't take very long. But sometimes you'll get some really good tidbits out of it. And occasionally it gets weird. I'm not going to lie. I had a meeting a few months ago, and the gentleman had actually posted his birthday online on LinkedIn, and yesterday was the next day, And so I walked into the meeting, I introduced myself, and I said, oh, and we had a little bit of small talk, and I said, oh, by the way, happy birthday. And he looked at me like I was his stalker, and it got a little weird. And I said, don't worry, it was on your LinkedIn profile. He said, oh yeah, I put it there. He says, I'm sorry, I'm hungover. So you can recover from those. So to answer to your question, for Sales Navigator, you can go both ways. I personally leave it open. I want to see people that I'm researching them. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the other feature of LinkedIn. I mean, there's a lot to be able to use LinkedIn Sales Navigator correctly. I find most people don't, and I find most of the training videos at LinkedIn aren't terribly useful. I haven't found them terribly useful. Where I found is talking to my peers and getting good ideas. Here, I don't know what your experience has been. My experience has been I always learn better from the people that are doing my job alongside of me rather than either trainers or boss. That's been my experience over the last 15 years. Most of the time, I find out really useful things from my peers. People are doing the same job as me. And this is where a lot of those things come from. It's not necessarily through the training videos in Sales Navigator. It's through other people trying to do the exact same job. But that's one of two functions. Figuring out who do I need to talk to in the organization. Sales Navigator is very, very useful for. That's number one. The other thing that it's very useful for is contacting them. So sometimes it may be very difficult to find someone's email address for whatever reason. Personally, I usually go into data.com and I'll find somebody else in the same office, in the same location, and that gives me the email format, and that usually works. But what happens if either you don't have time to do that, or for whatever reason you can't find anybody? It gives you a function called InMail, and it allows you to reach them. So on this guy, I can send a message. Wow, I can send a message directly to him. Look at that, because we actually share some groups. So this is what an InMail message looks like. You can pop it open here, and you'll see a few things here. Number one, gives you a quick reminder of who you're writing to. Always useful in case you forget. I write a lot of emails, especially prospecting emails. It's a really good idea to go, oh yeah, I'm only going to say, hi, Mike. Keep in mind, this is a real person. And then what category? I usually go under business deal. They've got a few of them here. You can do consulting offer, expertise request, get back in touch, new venture, whatever. But I'm a big fan of being honest. I'm talking to them about a business deal. They will have value to them, so I'm going to be direct about that, and your subject line and your message. Part of the interesting thing about InMail is this. They start giving you tips, and it's true. According to their research, LinkedIn says you can increase your likelihood of a response by 50% by mentioning people you know in common and keeping it to 100 words. And 100 words for a prospecting email is very, very difficult. But keep in mind, you're not trying to sell your whole solution. What you're just trying to sell is you're trying to sell enough value that they will talk to you for a short phone call. At least that's the way I set it up. They usually won't go for a face-to-face straight off the bat unless there's some sort of very strong connection there. If it's somebody I've never met and I have no connection with, I'll start off with a phone call because they'll usually take that 15 minutes. And then you want to leverage that into a face-to-face. LinkedIn InMail, which is what this is called, is a very useful feature. You don't get unlimited InMails. They give you a certain number of months, I think it's 2 or 3 a month that you're allowed to send. By the way, feel free to shoot me questions on this as we're going. You get 2 or 3 a month, maybe a little more, and it allows you to reach out to people that you don't know, which absolutely, in sales, that is our job. So it comes in handy, particularly if you can't find their emails. So here's another thing that happens a lot. I'll send out an email and it bounces. Now, what does that mean? At least in my experience, most of the time when that email bounces, it means that person has left. They've gone on, they've left for that company for whatever reason. So do I still want to get in contact with them? In my opinion, the answer is yes. I expect they're going to find a job in a similar industry, in a similar company, doing similar things. So if I wanted to talk to them in the first place, very likely I'm going to want to talk to them later so that I have a building relationship with that. Remember we talked about people with new jobs. Life is about timing. And if you can get them at the right time in a teachable, coachable moment or whatever you want to call it, you can work unbelievable deals if you talk to people exactly at the right time. And if they've moved on to their job, I'm actually okay with that. So here's one other thing about LinkedIn InMails. And I want to comment on this. So there's one thing is that does LinkedIn InMail work as well as it used to? In my opinion, no. I guess LinkedIn's having a lot of success in Sales Navigator, in selling Sales Navigator. So my response rates used to be 25, 30%. Now they're back down to 5 or 10, about the same as a regular email in LinkedIn email. And I think that's because there's just more people using it. Do I think that means it doesn't have value? No, I think it still has value. It has value in exactly the circumstances. It's people that you would not be able to reach otherwise. And the other thing that has value to me is that LinkedIn hit their tipping point about 1.5 years ago. Now, at that point, more than 51% of their users were accessing the LinkedIn app via their phones. So what will happen is when you send this email, it shows up on their phone. It's the closest thing you can get to sending them a text message, assuming that you don't have their phone number, that for somebody that you don't know. To me, that's useful. For my prospects, I want them popping up on that phone and saying, oh, wow, who's Jamie Jackson? Who is this guy? What does he want to talk about? To me, that's extremely valuable. Thoughts and questions around LinkedIn, Sales Navigator? Quiet group today. Either this is the most revolutionary sales information ever that covered every possible question, or everybody's still waking up. One or the other. But keep the questions coming. Let's talk about the next one. If you have any questions on LinkedIn, let me know. There's always a lot to do with LinkedIn. It is one of the primary tools in the industry that we use as salespeople. So let's take a look at audiobooks here. Audiobooks.com and .ca is another tool that I use in and around prospecting, and here's why. I had a conversation with someone who runs a very well-known sales training firm, and what I was trying to do is I was trying to distill it down to the essence. What really drives performance? If you're managing a team, if you are part of that team, what's the 80-20? What are those few things that you do every single day that actually drive performance? What is actually the biggest? What activity can you do that is the biggest predictor of your income as a salesperson? We are money motivated. That's why we are in sales. And we like it, and there's nothing wrong with that. So the question is, well, what do we do that leads to good results? And for a long time, my own experience had pointed to one thing. It was the number of new meetings you did with prospects, people you've never talked to before, and you have that initial meeting. That was the single biggest predictor of success in my experience. And funny enough, when I talked to the training firm, to the training company CEO, he had a much bigger data set than I do, and they do a lot of web-based training as well. So they have a lot of data in terms of what actually drives performance. And his answer was very interesting. He said the number one driver of a salesperson's income is how much time they spend training on this sales process. And they've measured it. They've measured all sorts of different things: prospecting calls, outbounds, reply rates, first prospect meetings, and everything. The single biggest driver is how much time they spend learning, which was an insight to me because I love to learn new things, especially as salespeople. I think we all do. Giving us a new tip, a new technique, a new way to look at things, a new angle, a new skill makes the next person we talk to, we're going to be that much more effective. We're going to add that much more value. We're going to make that much more money. That's useful. But the problem is, as always, with everything is time. Think about it. We're on the road all the time. Planes, trains, in the car, on a subway, wherever you want to be, you have to travel to these people. Very rarely do they come to you. And so how do you turn that time? How do you turn that travel time into learning time? Audiobooks is one way to be able to do that, because most of the good sales training material, I suppose, outside of Rockstar Sales, most of the sales training material that I've seen that was really good was in book format. But it's hard to have that time because we're always on the road. With an audiobook, you can download it. They've got an app. You can download it on your phone so that you can just pick up exactly where you left off, and it's $14.95 US a month. It's really not that expensive, and they give you one book a month, and then you can buy more if you need it. I suppose our best tip for audiobooks is this. Start with this book here. It's called The Challenger Customer. Has some great research and some great data in there. And if you don't get time to read it, download it on audiobooks and use it for your prospecting. Questions on that one? Okay. I'll keep that open just in case there are more questions on any of those. I want to talk about the last one. Up next is Fiverr. Fiverr with 2 R's. So this is another marketplace for freelancers. Now, you might be asking me, why are we covering yet another marketplace? Because it does different things, and it's at a different price point. Fiverr is a marketplace that has anything you could possibly think of that you want people to do for you, starting with a price point of $5 US, which is really interesting. As a sales, they've got some weird stuff in there too. If you want someone to sing you a happy birthday in a different language while dressed up as an animal, you can do that. You can get it on Fiverr. That said, the more useful versions come in under business. So this is their website here. We've got their business section. We've got virtual assistants, always useful, market research, business plans, lead consulting. Personally, I like to use the graphic design one a little better. On the far left here, we can see that you can get a variety of things designed. And here's why. The reason why that's useful, let's take a look at some. Let's talk about infographics. Always useful, particularly if you're doing any social selling. There you go. I will create a flat design infographic, $6. And you can filter it by price range, experience level. Let's go top rated seller. There you go, $6 and change. Amazing infographic. That is a great price point. That said, I got to manage everybody's expectations. Here, you're going to pay about $20, not $6 or $7 for anything decent. Now, how is this all useful in sales? That's a great question. So, what I've found is that the materials from the marketing departments of our companies have had limited use in recent years. What you used to leave behind a brochure or whatever behind. These days, it's less use. I had a client last week who said, I want you to tell me your 3 best ideas you have for our organization, and I want you to put it in writing so that I can forward it elsewhere in the organization. And my first thought was, okay, this is a custom thing. It's their organization with specific feedback, confidential information about some of the problems in their organization that they can't have getting out. So I wrote it down, problem, solution, why they should do it, what the next steps are. And I gave it to somebody I use on Fiverr to turn it into a 1-page brochure. It's specific to that client, to that situation, to that pitch. And that is a far more effective tool than you're ever going to get for some generic brochure, because it's tailored to them. Now, the challenge has always been a couple of things. One is its speed. How quickly can you get it? And 2, cost. Well, with Fiverr, all of a sudden, both of those challenges are solved. You can start cranking out very specific information for your prospects, for your clients, that helps them sell your ideas internally through the organization. That's primarily what I use it for. I use it for graphics. I use it for infographics. I also use them. To build logos. I have a LinkedIn group for some of my prospects that will share information that I think might be relevant to them. I had a logo design. It cost me $7. It's really neither here nor there. And a lot of the time you can expense that. And even not, I mean, the logo I paid for myself. It was $7. Who cares? And this stuff is so cheap, and it's so fast that you can get things done very quickly, and you can be much more effective at getting your prospects to sell your ideas internally. Does that make sense? Okay, caveats for Fiverr. Interesting part of caveats. Again, you got to be very specific. Ironically, I found the quality of work on Fiverr to be higher than Upwork, even though it's a lower price point. I have to go through fewer vendors before I find one that works here than I do on Upwork. Now, that said, you still got to be prepared. I mean, you got to do 2 or 3 of them. Like if you're doing an infographic, like for $7, get 3 or 4 people to do them, and then you'll have your guy, and you keep going back to them. That's the best way to manage this. And it's an extremely effective tool in terms of Fiverr and how I pitch to the clients. So questions around that. I know everybody's kind of quiet this morning. Is there questions around these 5 tools and how they apply, or how does that work? Because you've got to be able to spend about $20 to get something decent on Fiverr. Don't expect to spend $7. Those ones are going to be terrible. We'll get an extra gig like this. While we're waiting for questions to come in, we can click on this. So he's got a basic, and he's got a $50 standard. So this is one of the top guys there. That's what that's going to look like. They're going to try and upsell you with different add-ons, which is fair enough. Good for them. It's hard to, and you can even speed it up by a day for another $26. There's a bunch of different things. This guy's one of the top-rated sellers. Most of them aren't quite that expensive. I can usually find something very good for about $20, $25. So for Fiverr, that's what I've got in terms of the 5 tools. Before I do a recap of those tools and what's useful, Rupalin, do you want to just open the floor to any other questions in there?
Yeah, please, anybody, if you have any questions about these 5 tools that Jamie has kindly presented on, please enter your question through the chat function, and I'll go ahead and pass those over to Jamie.
Actually, in the meantime, I'll answer the other question that came in. How do we normally screen for quality producers of graphics? With Fiverr and Upwork, it's different between the two. So I'll go back a sec. There's different filters that you can do. Personally, I like to make sure that there's level 2 or top-rated sellers. And that refers to how much work they've got and the type of feedback they've got. That's usually the most important. And then I filter by feedback. I'll take a look at some of the feedback they've given along the way. So, for example, this guy has 3,963 reviews and a 5-star average. I know he's going to be really, really good. But he's also a little bit more expensive than I would pay. So I would go to somebody who's maybe a little bit cheaper. So here you go, $27 standard, 2 days delivery, 5 revisions, 10-point infographic. Amazing. He's got 450 reviews with an average of 5 stars. That's somebody I would use. Does that help? Okay. Rupalin, while you're grabbing all those questions, why don't I do a quick recap of the tools, and then I want to give everybody an invite as well as an item of value for even coming on the webinar this morning. So the 5 tools that we're looking at, there's a bunch of different things. Starting number 1, Yesware, allows you to do 2 things. 1, see when your prospects are reading and opening your emails, and 2, give them an automated send to follow-up that gets canceled immediately as soon as they respond to your emails. $25 US a month for the team edition. That's the one I recommend. Fantastic, really useful tool. Number 2, Upwork. Use it for lead generation. Grab one of these guys, doesn't have to be these guys specifically, but get somebody building lead lists for you so that you have a large list of brand new people to talk to. Because a lot of the time that can be a barrier to sending that initial email or picking up the phone for the reps. I know it was for me. I want a big list of people to talk to because that's motivating. And if I know where they come from, that's wonderful. You can buy back your time for 30 to 50 cents a name. Really useful. Up next, Sales Navigator. Probably the most important sales tool out there right now, and probably the one that I see misused the most. It allows for $80 a month or slightly less if you purchase an annual subscription, you can find out the people that you need to talk to and navigate that organization and give them a way to reach out to them on their mobile phone most of the time. So that's something very interesting. I use it every single day. Up next, audiobooks. Now, audiobooks turns your travel time into learning time. Love it. By the way, I don't get a commission for any of these things. I wish I did. That'd be wonderful. But sadly, I don't. These are all recommendations because it's stuff that I use. The stuff that the Rockstar team uses. We all use it. $15 a month, you can get a brand new book a month. I would say start with this one. The Challenger Customer was a fantastic book with great data in there in terms of how to sell things. And lastly, I'd go back to Fiverr. Fiverr is another marketplace for freelancers. I use them to do specific brochures and infographics and logos, and it's cheap and it's fast. And ironically, the quality of work is actually higher than Upwork, even though it's a much lower price point. And you'll expect to pay around $20, $25 for something decent off of Fiverr. So those are the 5 tools. Rupalin, any questions that came in?
Yes, they're all sent through the chat function, Jamie.
All right, let's take a look. How to get management buy-in to cover the cost of these tools? Good question. So there's a couple of different ways to go. One is just to ask. The price point of these is so low that it's a real bonus. So that's one thing. You just say, look, hey, it's 27 bucks or whatever it is. It's 80 bucks a month. For me, I was able to sell a lot of these tools internally because I was able to demonstrate their effectiveness. I was able to show what they do and how much it costs and the sales productivity and the more selling time available to the reps as a result. So that was the major selling point. It was selling time. That's the key to selling it internally. And alternatively, you can just expense it too. A lot of these things are so small that ask your boss in advance. Make sure everybody's on board. Don't go cold cocking them with a random purchase somewhere. But make sure that we've actually got the buy-in from your boss and just expense it. Take a look next. No questions. Phone applications that you use to increase productivity. At the moment, no. I haven't found anything that's a good phone application yet. That said, it's because by the time I pick up the phone, it's rare that I actually get anybody on the line. So to me, the phone is primarily, if it's somebody you don't know, that phone is primarily a tool to make sure that they know your voice. And that you realize that it's not just emails. There's a lot of people that are just hiding behind their keyboards in sales, I found, and afraid to pick up the phone and leave a voicemail message, which you will get voicemail. And that in and of itself is an entirely different skill. It's a real skill to leave voicemail messages. Out of these tools, are there any that allow multiple users to save on costs? Yes, absolutely. Both Yesware and LinkedIn Sales Navigator will cut you great deals the more users you have. That said, you got to have at least 10. If you don't have 10, then it's probably not going to do it. And I would suspect audiobooks, if you ping them an email and you wanted to do a group discount, I'd be very surprised if they turned it down. What tool would you suggest would be the most worthwhile as an independent sales rep? Independent rep, you're going to have to balance off the cost versus the utility. Honestly, the first one I would invest in, I would start with Yesware first because it's $25 US a month. It's not going to break the bank, but you'll get a lot of value out of that. LinkedIn Sales Navigator is also useful, but there are a lot of ways that you can use LinkedIn for free that will get you some of the way. It will take you more time, but you can get there. I would do Yesware first, and then I'd hire somebody to build me lead lists second. That's what I would do. What else have we got here? Any free tools? Multiple users. Are there any free tools that can suggest using? Well, yes. I would say that the free tools that are available to use that will increase your sales and really increase your income and increase your experience at work as a sales rep aren't really software tools. They are the basics. Your free tool is showing up on time. Your free tool is being prepared. Your free tool is every time you pick up the phone or send an email or meet with a prospect that you are adding value to them. And if you do those things, those are all free. It doesn't cost anything. Show up prepared. Be dressed appropriately. Have everything that you need to hand. Keep a couple extra pens handy because your pens die at the most inopportune times. I've got about 7 on me at any given time when I'm in a meeting in my bag. for precisely that reason. That costs nothing, but that will move your sales performance way up because very, very few people do that. As simple as showing up on time. Multiple users. Have you used any tools that we deeply regret? Any mishaps? Ooh, sure. Sure. I would say that the mishap around the tools that I have used was usually around how the operator uses it rather than actually anything else. It was me making an error. I had written someone's name wrong in an InMail, for example. Tools that I've used that I've regretted. Years ago, I used a fax blast service. I regretted that. That wasn't terribly useful. But in terms of tools, the mishaps were my own making rather than the tool itself. It's the operator, not the tool, if that makes sense. Rupalin, anything else coming in?
There's one coming in.
Okay. What has been your favorite? Ooh, you know what? It keeps changing. Truthfully, when I discovered Yesware, I thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. But now that I use it every day, I think, okay, well, what happens next? Then I see LinkedIn. There's so much to do with LinkedIn. It is such a skill to be able to learn how to use. I'd say LinkedIn's currently my favorite because there's so much there. You can undergo training on how to use LinkedIn as a salesperson, and you can undergo that training. You can do 5 or 10 sessions just on how to use LinkedIn as a salesperson and not extract maximum value from that. And I don't think any of those tools quite have that learning curve or that breadth of service offerings where you can explore Fiverr and get what you need in probably a week, where LinkedIn will take you a while. I think that one's my favorite because it's the most skill to use. Okay, so that's the tail end of the questions. So what I want to do here is, as a thank you to everybody, Rockstar Sales, that's what we do is sales training online, because what we wanted as sales reps we wanted to be able to have training that was ongoing and affordable. Anybody here wants to go on the rockstarsales.ca website, use the code CPSA, and it's a month's worth of free training. Typically, we'll do a session once a week, either at lunchtime or after hours on a particular sales topic. As a gift to everybody on the webinar, please take it. The code is CPSA. Rupalin, it's all yours.
Excellent. So on behalf of the CPSA, we really want to thank you, Jamie, our host, and our attendants for taking part in today's webinar. Please contact us should you have any questions. Make sure to email us at salessuccess@cpsa.com. And for those of you that would like a video copy of this webinar, please stay tuned. This should be emailed to you shortly, as well as the promo code given to you by Jamie on his sales training at Rockstar Sales. Everything will be wrapped up in a quick email sent to you in a few hours. So thanks again, everybody, and please make sure to attend Part 2, which will be held on December 15th at 11 a.m. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.